Good afternoon and welcome to Lunch Break with the Rabbi. Today is the fourth day of Chanukah. Tonight we're going to be lighting the fifth candle of Chanukah. So today is Monday, December 14th, the 28th of Kislev. And as we continue our Chanukah class every single day, discussing another attitude and another exciting aspect of the story of Chanukah. Today's class is titled, as you can see, is the Chanukah debate, probiotic or antibiotic. There was once this Jew, in the middle of the great time of communism, where many Jews were being slaughtered, or people were, Stalin killed over 10 million people. And this fellow was about to be shot and killed by the communists, and they told him, you have one last chance to say your final prayers and your last wish. So the Jew says, listen here, my last wish is that after I get shot, I get cremated, and that my ashes be spread over Stalin's grave. Well, they look at him and say, Stalin hasn't died yet. She says, I have no problem. I'll wait. In Judaism, there's no such thing as waiting. A child turns 13 years old, boom, he's obligated in every one of the 613 commandments. There's no delays. There's no training session. It's automatic. You don't say, today I'll do one commandment, tomorrow I'll do a second commandment, the next day I'll do a third commandment. In the contrast to Chanukah, the first night of Chanukah we light one candle, the second night of Chanukah we light two candles, the third night of Chanukah three candles, and so on, and we progress as time goes on. Why isn't that we just light all of them at once? Why don't we just light all 7 candles? If the miracle is to celebrate and commemorate the 7 candles that we're lighting in the Holy Temple, just light all 7 candles at once. Why every day one? It's like if you tell somebody when it comes to Sukkot and say, the first day eat in the Sukkah, the second day you'll bring the Esrog, the third day bring the Lulav, the fourth day the Arava, the next day the Hadassim. Just do all the mitzvahs at once. The same thing with the Chanukah miracle. If we're celebrating what happened, the miracle lasted for 8 days, light all 8 candles on the first day. It's interesting that in 1978, while Jimmy Carter was dealing with the Iran hostage situation, the only time that he left the White House during that period was to light the menorah on the White House lawn. And it was the 4th night of Chanukah, and they were lighting the menorah, and Jimmy Carter was there. And Jimmy Carter asked the rabbi, who was Rabbi Shem Tov from Chabad of Philadelphia and Chabad of Washington, D.C. at the time, he asked him, why don't you light the entire menorah? And he felt it was like a bad omen, especially for what was happening in the world, that only a half a menorah would be lit. And Rabbi Shem Tov conceded and continued to light it, as he was very persistent, Jimmy Carter, the president at the time, that they light the whole menorah. But what is it about in Judaism that every single day that we just in Chanukah, that every single day we light one more candle? This was not the way it was done in the Holy Temple. What is it in general in Judaism, in this case, that shouldn't we do the best the first time? Well, interestingly enough, this is not our debate, but this is a debate that stems back of Talmudic times. Talmudic times, a debate between the great schools of Shammai and the school of Hillel. The school of Shammai said that one should light 8 candles on the first night of Chanukah, 7 on the second, 6 on the fifth, on the third, and every single day of Chanukah going down another candle. While the school of Hillel said, every single day light 1 candle and progress 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as we do today. And the Talmudic questions and the Talmudic scholars debate, what is the rationale? Why does the house of Shammai, the school of Shammai, say start with 8, then 7, then 6? And why does the school of Hillel say go every day 1, 2, 3, 4? And the Talmud explains that the school of Shammai believes, and it compares it to the time of the holiday of Sukkot, and it goes to the days that are left of Chanukah. So on the first night, there's a potential of another 8 days of Chanukah, so therefore we light 8 candles. The next day, 7, then 6, then 5. We go to the remaining days of Chanukah. While Beis Hillel says, first of all, we always go up in holiness. And secondly, we go according to the days that have already passed. So today, 1 day passes, so second day, and so far, and so on. But what's the real rationale? What is it? What are they arguing about? which takes us back into the question of what is Chanukah all about. The Talmud asks, "My Chanukah, what is Chanukah? What are we celebrating?" There are many other celebrations that celebrate miraculous events of the Jewish people. There's Purim, there's Passover. Chanukah was celebrated in a time at the end of the Second Temple, the last 200 years of the Second Temple, where the Greek government, who was then under the king Antiochus, after conquering Syria and all the other in Egypt, and he was coming, including the land of Israel. And in order to enforce his rule within the land of Israel, he was the first form of communism. He decided to destroy any type of religious observance that wasn't something that he agreed with. And because of that, the king tried influencing into the Holy Temple itself, to the extent that he tried installing his own high priest. They were sending sacrifices and non-kosher animals. And over here, if we come along, the story of Hannah and her 7 sons happened during this time, where he tried to influence Hannah and her 7 sons to serve the idols, and they blatantly refused and were willing to kill them, and they were killed because of it. And amongst this entire kingdom, this entire force that was trying to destroy Judaism at its core, starting with the Holy Temple, a group of 5 people, Mattisyahu and his 5 sons, stood up against this great massive army. And they were able to slowly but surely eradicate them and chase them from the land of Israel, so they should be able to serve in the Holy Temple, clean it up, and serve God the way it's supposed to. But we see something very unique. Only at the end of the entire story do we have the story about the oil. After they entirely chased the Greeks out, and they fought them, and they waged war, and many people were killed, were they able to then find a flask of oil, which that flask of oil was not ruined and still had the seal of the high priest, and it lasted for 8 days. And what do we make the whole miracle about? The flask of oil. What about the victory? What about the war? Of course, it's mentioned in the Viala Nisim. But what does the Talmud tell us? What is Chanukah? That they were able to find that flask of oil. Not only that, in all the other celebrations that we celebrate for the saving of our life, take the celebration of Passover, Purim, there are always these festivities. There's a meal. There's no obligation to have a meal on Chanukah. Of course, we have latkes and donuts and all the different customs that come along with it. But what about this meal for festivities? Why aren't we celebrating the victory? And over here, Chanukah comes along and tells us a deeper message. The truth is that the story of Chanukah is not just about a victory over the Jewish people. Should the Jewish people at that time went along and become Greeks and taken on the Greek philosophy, nothing would have happened to them. It was only because the Jewish people were steadfast in their Jewish commitment, and they said, we are not going to assimilate into Greek mythology. We are not going to allow ourselves to become influenced by the Greeks. We will stand strong to the teachings and values of the Torah. We will stand strong for the freedom of religion and not allow ourselves to be assimilated and persuaded. And over here is the question of how we go about it. How does one face adversity? How does one deal with oil? How does one deal with the darkness of the world? And why is the miracle celebrated with oil? Because what the Greeks were doing, they were trying to extinguish the flame, the oil, the light of the world, the holiness of the Torah. And through the victory of the Hashmonaim, through the flask of oil that was found, we were able to rekindle that beautiful light, that holiness, that purity in the Holy Temple. The flask of oil being found, celebrating the mitzvah of Chanukah about the oil, is not just about a miracle of oil, but a symbolic of the oil of the good versus the bad, of Torah versus those that try to send impurity. And it teaches us the lessons of how important holiness over impurity is. Which brings us back to our discussion of the debate. How are we to light the menorah? For the days coming in or for the days going out? There are 2 ways to look at darkness. There are 2 ways how we can combat darkness. You look at the world and you see what's going on. You see the evil. You see the Greeks are trying to assimilate. Beis Shammai, the school of Shammai, says you got to thrust all your power you got in it. 8 candles, give them all, knock it out. Beis Hillel says no. Slowly but surely, light 1 candle, win them over. Light a 2nd candle, win them over. Every single night you're going to add on in light. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, the school of Shammai and the school of Hillel over here, were telling us that when we see darkness, how do we have to deal with it? They were telling us 2 methods of how we can approach something that is evil and the darkness that exists in the world. Beis Hillel says, contend with what you have. In fact, they looked at the miracle of oil. What happened in the time of the Holy Temple? What really happened? How many candles did they light? And there are 2 commentaries that they light every single one of the branches of the menorah and it lasted for 8 days, or they lasted 1 and that lasted for 8 days. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel over here, the school of Shammai and school of Hillel, are telling us of how a Jewish person is supposed to go about their way of serving God. When we serve God, there are 2 methods that we have to do. Either is to deter the evil or to bring about good. In fact, there's another story which is told about Shammai and Hillel. That once a convert came to Shammai and said, teach me the entire Torah while standing on 1 foot. Shammai took a ruler and told the guy, go out of here. Go fly a kite. While Hillel said, do not do unto others what you don't want to be done to yourself. That is the entire Torah, the rest of his commentary. Did Shammai not want to convert the into person? Did Shammai not have a demeanor of expecting and relating to people properly? Why did he chase the person out? Because Shammai says that when a Yid confront evil, in order to get rid of the bad that exists within a person, you need a change, an absolute change, a dramatic change. And the only way that dramatic change can happen is when it comes from within, when there's an absolute, when there's something within the individual that's going to recognize that he needs to change, not looking at the same ideas and expecting the same results. So when a person said, stand on 1 foot, Shammai chased him out with the ruler of the home. And he said, what you need to see is, you need to see that you're interested in coming through a different type of personality. You need to want to change, and only then can I convert you. While Hillel said, taught him one thing: take this thought, experience it, permeate it, generate it. That light will bring to more light, into more light, into more light. Think about it. When we light the menorah, where do we light the menorah? We light it at the door, on the right side, on the left side. The right side is the mezuzah, the left side the menorah, so we are surrounded by the mitzvahs. We light it to illuminate the outside when it gets dark. The menorah's sole purpose is to transform darkness to light. The debate of the school of Shammai and school of Hillel still live on. Every single one of them with their opinion, with their decision, which is how do we approach education, what Chanukah is about. Thrust them into it, tear away the darkness, tear it down, and then slowly but surely they'll see the darkness ripple away, or slowly but surely feed them step by step, one by one, and ultimately they'll build up an immune system that the light in the world, that they will not have any evil come infect them. Is it probiotic? Give them the healthy food, the healthy diet, so they won't catch the infection. Or antibiotic? Throw all your goods at them, destroy the bacteria, and then rebuild it again. The school of Shammai and the school of Hillel, they're both correct. We need to find a happy medium for both. Every single day, increasing in light, putting another candle to the menorah, making this world a godly place. Wishing you a happy Chanukah and the very best for the rest of the day. Stay safe, happy, and well. Happy Chanukah, and see you again tomorrow at 1 p.m. All the best.